I never thought a dinner table could feel like a firing squad, but that Sunday evening at the Turner Mansion proved otherwise. I had planned it perfectly, every detail. The roast was seasoned to Stephanie's impossible standards. The wine chilled to Georgia's fussy preference, and the table set with the heirloom china I was not even trusted to touch during our first months living there. I placed the ultrasound photo next to Alex's plate, my heart pounding with hope. I imagined surprise, maybe a gasp, followed by smiles and congratulations. I imagined Alex reaching for my hand. Instead, silence sank over the table like a tombstone. Stephanie set down her fork without touching her food. Georgia blinked, then laughed a cold, joyless snort that sliced through me like broken glass. "Well," Stephanie said after dabbing her lips with her napkin, "this is unexpected. Not wonderful. Not congratulations. Just unexpected." Alex looked everywhere but at me, his face pale and blank, as if the sight of our child growing inside me was some sort of betrayal. That night, he turned his back to me in bed. No words, no comfort, no warmth. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe they were just shocked. Maybe they needed time. But time passed and the house grew colder. Stephanie started leaving medical books on high-risk pregnancies around the house full of statistics on miscarriages and complications. Georgia made comments about women who trap men with babies. Alex came home later each day claiming deadlines, stress meetings. But it was not work he was avoiding, it was me. The woman he had once held like something precious. I saw it clearly then. I was not part of their family. I was a mistake that had made it to the dinner table. I was someone to tolerate until I broke down, gave up, or disappeared. And that child growing inside me, that was the threat. The threat to their name, their bloodline, their control. They did not want a grandchild. They wanted a clean slate. And they were waiting for me to fall. I just did not know they would push. That night, as Alex lay asleep beside me, I stared at the ceiling and whispered a promise to my unborn son they will never win. After that night, something inside me began to shift. The moment I realized my pregnancy was not met with love, but treated like a scandal, I knew I was no longer safe, not emotionally, not mentally, not physically. Stephanie's facade of gentility fell away quickly. Her words grew sharper, her tone clipped with disdain, especially when she thought Alex was not listening. "Some girls rush into motherhood to cover up deeper issues," she said, once setting her teacup down with a clink that sounded like judgment. I sat there silent, pretending not to hear, clutching my belly, as if I could shield my child from her poison. Georgia, never one to hide her feelings, doubled down. Her comments became cruel jokes, punchlines, that always ended with a dig at me. When I made dinner using my grandmother's casserole recipe, she grimaced theatrically and muttered, "Some people think adding cheese makes it gourmet." The laughter that followed from her friends stung worse than any slap. She invited those friends often now, ensuring I would feel excluded in my own home. They would sit in the sunroom, sipping cocktails and comparing designer nurseries, while I was left folding laundry and fighting nausea in the kitchen. But the worst betrayal came from Alex, my husband, my protector, the man who used to warm my hands in his coat pockets when I forgot gloves, who used to hum lullabies to my belly in private moments before sleep. That man vanished. In his place stood a stranger, with an accountant's smile and the emotional warmth of granite. He avoided conversations about the baby, waved off every nursery suggestion, and once told me, maybe we should wait to be excited. Wait to be excited, I was already showing. His mother left pamphlets about pregnancy complications on my pillow. His sister made snide remarks about postpartum bodies at dinner. And Alex said nothing. Every night, he turned away every time he left the room. When I entered, every time I caught him whispering behind closed doors with his mother, I died a little. I tried to talk to him. God knows I tried, but he said I was being sensitive, that they were just old-fashioned. Old-fashioned. Is that what we call psychological torture? Now traditional families might have rules, but the Turners had tactics, and I could see it so clearly now. I was the outsider, who had dared to disrupt their precious hierarchy. They were circling like wolves, waiting for me to falter. And I was slowly running out of strength to stand. But I would not let them break me. Not for my sake, for my child's. If this part of Ariana's story made your blood boil, comment your thoughts, and hit subscribe so I can keep sharing more truths. I should have seen it coming. Every day in that house was another thread unraveling, another brick cracking in the foundation of the life I thought I had built. But even knowing how hostile the atmosphere had become, I was not prepared for how far they were willing to go. It was a Tuesday afternoon, the kind that should have passed quietly. Stephanie insisted on lunch in the formal dining room again, and as usual, I was expected to clean up afterward. My back ached, and my feet were swollen from carrying the extra weight, but I knew better than to complain. Complaining only gave them more ammunition. The grand staircase was polished like a mirror, its ornate railing cold and hard beneath my palm, as I slowly climbed it with a tray of dishes balanced against my belly. The house was silent, too silent. I remember that strange stillness, like the air before a thunderstorm, like the mansion itself was holding its breath. I reached the top landing, took one careful step forward, and then force. A sharp, deliberate shove between my shoulder blades. The tray went flying china and silverware, clattering and shattering in a discordant scream against the walls and floor. My body twisted in midair, my arms wrapped protectively around my stomach. And then I fell. Down. Every step an explosion of pain. Each impact reverberated through my spine and ribs, each second stretched into a nightmare that would not end. When I finally stopped crumpled at the base of the stairs, my world went quiet again. Except for the voices. Hushed. Calm. Not panicked. Not rushing to help. Not screaming in fear. Just satisfied. I lay there, pain radiating through every part of me, the cool marble seeping into my skin, and in that moment, I understood. I understood exactly what kind of people I had married into. They had not been waiting for me to fall, they had planned it. The bruises on my ribs bloomed in grotesque purples and blues. The doctor at the emergency room was kind but distant, pressing the ultrasound wand against my abdomen while I held my breath. The steady, defiant beat of my baby's heart filled the room like a war drum. He was alive. Somehow, miraculously, he had survived. Everything looks normal, she said, as if my baby's heartbeat was not the sound of a miracle. You need to be more careful on those stairs. I smiled and nodded because I had learned that telling the truth in a house full of liars only made you the problem. I played the part of the clumsy, tired, overwhelmed pregnant woman, while inside something sharper and colder than pain began to take root. Rage. Strategy. The first time they tried to erase me, they failed. And I would make sure they never got a second chance. That night, as Alex drove me home in silence, I made another promise. Not just to my baby this time, but to myself. They would regret not finishing the job. The bruises faded, but the memory of that fall remained etched into every step I took inside that mansion. After returning from the hospital, I stopped pretending things would get better. They would not. The Turners had shown me exactly who they were, and who I had become to them: a threat, a liability, a problem to be eliminated quietly. But if they wanted me gone, they should have killed me when they had the chance. Instead, they left me breathing, and that was their fatal mistake. I moved like a ghost through their home, keeping my eyes lowered, my voice soft, my movements careful. Stephanie smirked more often. Georgia practically hummed as she set fresh flowers in the dining room. Even Alex seemed lighter, as if my perceived submission gave him permission to relax. But while they exhaled, I inhaled. While they celebrated, I studied. While they plotted my erasure, I mapped their weaknesses. I noted Stephanie's yoga classes, her weekly bridge club, her Thursday lunches at the country club. I memorized Georgia's erratic sleep schedule and her growing dependence on the anxiety medication she kept carelessly in an unlocked cabinet. But most importantly, I tracked Alex, my husband. The man who used to hold me as if I were the most precious thing he had ever touched now treated me like an unwanted guest. He left for work every morning at exactly 7:30, and returned at 6:15, unless he had late meetings, which had become more frequent since I got pregnant. He trusted me to make his meals, never questioning what went into them. That trust would become my sharpest weapon. I had mentioned my chemistry degree once early in our relationship, but he dismissed it with a polite nod and immediately changed the subject. He thought I was harmless. He thought I was stupid. He thought wrong. My plan took shape over sleepless nights, each wave of phantom pain reminding me of the fall they orchestrated. I began collecting ingredients, nothing illegal, nothing overt. Over-the-counter medications here, herbs from the health food store there. I bought items from different places in different neighborhoods, never drawing attention. The pharmacist saw a pregnant woman with morning sickness. The herbalist saw a curious customer. None of them saw the storm I was building. The day I slipped the final compound into his meal was the day I stopped being a victim. I cooked his favorite beef, Wellington, golden and flaky, and stuffed with the tiniest bit of my vengeance. He ate every bite, said it was delicious, smiled at me for the first time in weeks. I smiled back serene, saintly. After dinner, I taped a note to the underside of his breakfast plate, packed a small duffel bag, and prepared to disappear. But not before I delivered the truth he had chosen to ignore. 2 words written in perfect script, infertile now. I was not just leaving. I was detonating a truth bomb that would obliterate the legacy they tried to protect by destroying me. They thought I was the girl who fell. They had no idea I was the woman who rose. By the time the city swallowed me, I had shed every last trace of the Turner name, except the one that mattered, my son's. Liam Alexander Carter. The name sounded like armor when I whispered it to myself in the dim hallway of St. Mary's Community Clinic, just moments before his first cries sliced through the silence like a battle cry. He was born at 3:47 a.m. on a rainy Tuesday morning with a pair of lungs that made even the weary midwife Rosa chuckle through her exhaustion. "He is a fighter," she said, laying him on my chest. And I knew she was right. He was my proof, my justice, my living defiance. 3 days later, I was handed his birth certificate. Baby boy Turner, it read. I stared at it, my fingers trembling. Not for sentiment, but for strategy. It was a document of undeniable lineage of legal consequence. I took the name the family used like a shield, and I turned it into a blade. My first apartment was a single room above a Vietnamese restaurant in the forgotten edges of the city. The walls were thin, the mattress lumpy, and the water pressure a gamble, but it was mine. I hung blankets over the windows for privacy and pushed Liam's bassinet into the warmest corner. We survived on instant noodles and the bits of cash I had saved during my final months at the mansion, money tucked away dollar by dollar, hidden behind light switch panels and inside winter boots. I found work wherever I could vanish into the background. Early mornings were spent scrubbing floors in office buildings before anyone arrived. Tuesday and Thursday nights, I walked dogs for the kind of people who had never set foot on the sidewalks they lived above. But it was sewing that saved us. Mrs. Chin, the owner of the alteration shop 2 blocks from our apartment, noticed the perfect stitches I had sewn into Liam's outgrown onesies. She offered me small jobs at first, hemming pants, repairing zippers, but soon I was taking home gowns and suits, altering them with a precision that whispered of something deeper. I worked late into the night, needle flashing beneath a desk lamp, while Liam slept on a folded towel beside me. Every stitch was more than thread. It was a silent vow I will not be erased. When Martha Rodriguez knocked on my door that December night, soup in hand, concern in her eyes, and space to offer upstairs, it felt like life was giving me a chance to rebuild, not from what was taken, but from what I had learned to protect. I moved above her tailor shop that week. 2 rooms, a working stove, a door that locked, and a woman downstairs who never once asked who Liam's father was. She just saw me. She saw my calloused fingers, my bloodshot eyes, and the fire I was no longer hiding. In that space between bolts of satin and murmured lullabies, I stopped surviving. I started creating. And I was not finished yet. Life above Martha's shop was not easy, but it was honest. The rhythm of our days became a kind of music needle to thread steam from the iron, the quiet breathing of a child who had survived what others never wanted him to. Liam's laughter echoed off walls that had once been silent. His tiny feet pattered across the worn wooden floors, chasing scraps of fabric and sunlight. And as he grew, so did something else: purpose. I kept every record, every receipt from doctor's visits, every vaccination certificate, every milestone scribbled in the margins of a second-hand planner. Photos of Liam's first tooth, his first step, his first smile caught in the flicker of Martha's desk lamp. I knew instinctively that proof would matter someday, that the same people who tried to erase him would come back claiming he never existed. I refused to leave room for denial. While Liam napped, I sewed. While he played, I designed. While he slept, I studied business articles, pattern books, online courses. Martha, with her silver braid and strong hands, taught me the soul of sewing. I brought in the systems. Together, we transformed her old-world tailor shop into something modern, something alive. She watched me with quiet pride, often muttering, "You have good hands. But your heart knows how to fight." She was right. One evening, while altering a wedding gown, my phone rang. I nearly let it go to voicemail. An unknown number during bedtime was never a good sign, but something told me to answer. A man's voice, formal and careful, introduced himself as Clayton Hendris, attorney for the Turner estate. Just hearing that name felt like a cold knife sliding down my spine. I tightened my grip on the phone as Liam stacked blocks at my feet, completely unaware his entire life was shifting again. "Are you the mother of Liam Alexander Turner?" he asked. I paused, throat dry. "Who is asking? I need to verify information regarding a child born approximately 22 months ago," he continued. Mr. Turner, he meant Kyle, the late patriarch, made changes to his will before his passing. "The estate is being withheld due to a clause involving a biological grandson." I nearly dropped the phone. In that moment, everything became clear. Kyle had seen something in me and Liam. He had known. He had protected us from beyond the grave. The Turners had declared Liam dead, had forged papers, told lies, and built their future on a deception. But here, we were living proof. Clayton's voice softened when I hesitated. "If your son is who we believe he is the rightful heir to the Turner estate. Approximately 12 million in assets." I looked at Liam, then my miracle, my anchor, and felt something old and sharp uncoil in my chest. They had tried to destroy us, to erase us, and now they would answer for every bruise, every silence, every shove down the stairs. "Mr. Hendris," I said clearly, the fire in my voice no longer hidden. "We need to meet. I have documentation of my own." 2 days after that call, I stood in the lobby of Hendris Watson and Associates, Liam's small hand wrapped around my fingers and a thick manila envelope pressed against my ribs. The receptionist smiled politely, oblivious to the gravity of what I carried: proof of life betrayal and survival. Clayton Hendris greeted us with an unexpected softness. He had cleared a corner of his office for Liam Block's picture books, a juice box. "You brought him," he said with a voice caught between awe and regret. "I brought the truth," I replied, handing him the envelope. Inside were hospital records, signed birth certificates, photos, vaccination logs, DNA samples, and copies of every documented milestone since Liam's first breath. As he flipped through the papers, his expression shifted from professional detachment to stunned recognition to visible outrage. "They showed me fabricated medical reports," he said, jaw-tightening. "They told me your child was lost in a miscarriage. They forged everything." I nodded, not with pride, but with a calm forged in fire. "They did more than lie. They tried to erase us. And when that did not work, they tried to destroy us." I told him everything about the fall, the hush that followed it, the pain I swallowed in silence to protect Liam. I watched Clayton's knuckles whiten as he gripped his pen, fury settling across his features like a storm rolling in. "Do you understand what this means?" he asked, finally, eyes flicking to where Liam sat on the floor, stacking blocks, with focused determination. "It means they lost," I said simply. That same afternoon, Clayton's private investigator delivered a thick folder of surveillance and financial records. Photos of Alex with a woman I had never seen before. Her name was Victoria Ashford, heiress to a pharmaceutical empire, and according to the engagement photos tucked inside the file, Alex's fiancé. Elegant blonde, pristine. Everything the Turners thought I failed to be. Their wedding was scheduled for Saturday. Cathedral ceremony, country club reception, 500 guests. And among the neatly clipped documents lay one more page, Victoria's premarital health screening results. Routine, thorough, and now devastating. Alex Turner was clinically permanently infertile. The note I left beneath his plate was no metaphor. It was fact. I stared at that report, heart-pounding, not with fear, but with the cool clarity of justice. They tried to rewrite the truth, but I had burned it into their legacy. Does she know? I asked. Clayton nodded slowly. This morning. Results went to both parties. The fallout has already started. I imagined Victoria seated in some luxury suite, surrounded by florists and makeup artists, checking her email only to find out that her perfect future was built on a lie. The Turners had gambled everything on burying me. Now the foundation they stood on was collapsing beneath them, and they never even saw the match in my hand. I was not at the cathedral that Saturday morning, but I did not need to be. Martha's niece worked catering. She called me the moment the bells began to ring, her voice crackling with excitement. "It is happening," she whispered. "Just like you said." 500 guests filled St. Michael's Cathedral, politicians, investors, high society names, who only wore tailored silence and scandal-proof smiles. Victoria Ashford stood at the grand entrance in a Vera Wang gown that had taken 8 months to create, lace cascading behind her like mist. Alex waited at the altar in his bespoke tuxedo, but even from the back row, the tension was obvious. Something was wrong. Victoria walked slowly, deliberately. Her eyes never left Alex's face. The hush in the cathedral grew thick. When she reached the 6th step from the altar, she stopped. The entire room leaned in. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice clear and calm, like the start of a storm. "Thank you for coming to witness what was meant to be a celebration of love and truth. Unfortunately, only one of those is present today." Gasps rippled through the pews. Stephanie Turner stood stiff in the front row, her hands clenched in her lap. Georgia gripped her designer clutch, like it could shield her from what was coming. "This morning," Victoria continued, "I received results from our premarital health screening." She pulled a folded paper from her bouquet and let it unfold in the silence. "It states that my fiancé is infertile. Permanently. Irreversibly. A condition he has apparently known about for quite some time." Alex took a step forward, his face pale and slack with panic, but Victoria's raised hand froze him in place. "You let me believe we were planning a family. You let me dream of children, a home, a future built on love. You let me build it on lies." She dropped the paper to the floor. It fluttered down like the last leaf before winter. "There will be no wedding," she said. "No vows. No future." She turned, lifted her train, and walked back down the aisle without breaking stride. The cathedral doors boomed shut behind her like a judgment. In that moment, the Turner legacy cracked wide open. As if on cue, Clayton appeared, stepping forward with papers in hand. Legal transfer documents, proof of Liam's paternity, evidence of fraud. Georgia screamed. Stephanie collapsed in her seat. Alex stood alone at the altar, framed by stained glass and disgrace. And though I was miles away, folding Liam's pajamas in our quiet apartment, I felt the shift in the air like thunder breaking. The world they tried to build on my bones had crumbled beneath their feet. The empire they thought would erase me had just crowned the child they tried to kill. My child, my son, Liam Alexander Carter, heir not only to their fortune, but to their fall. I held his shirt against my chest and smiled. Justice had not knocked. It had marched through the cathedral in heels and silk and left no survivors. The knock came on a Tuesday evening as the last streaks of sunset filtered through the boutique's front windows. I was teaching Liam how to fasten buttons on one of Martha's vintage dresses, his small fingers fumbling with the fabric, his brow furrowed with adorable intensity. 3 soft raps at the door. Not urgent, not aggressive, just hesitant, almost apologetic. Before I could move, Martha called up from below, her voice clipped and protective. "There is a man here. Says he is family. Do you want me to send him away?" I already knew who it was. I had felt it building like a pressure system, like unfinished business, pulling itself toward me. I told her to let him come up. There are some ghosts you cannot outrun. When I opened the door, Alex stood there like a ruined monument. His once perfect posture had caved in on itself, his designer suit now too loose on his thinner frame. Even his presence felt faded. Gone was the man who walked like the world owed him something. In his place was someone I barely recognized, hollow, unsure, searching. "Sarah." He started my old name, slipping from his lips like a wound. "Ariana," I corrected sharply, stepping aside just enough to let him enter, but not enough to invite closeness. Liam peeked out from behind my legs, curious eyes scanning the stranger, who looked eerily like his own reflection. Alex froze when he saw him. I watched the shift in his face, the recognition, the grief, the awe all tangled together. "He's beautiful," Alex whispered. "He looks just like my father." "Kyle would have loved him," I said plainly, letting the truth settle between us like dust. Alex sank into Martha's old velvet armchair, without waiting for permission. He began to speak haltingly, earnestly, about regret pressure, the ways he had failed as a husband, as a man, as a father. He begged for a second chance, promised to walk away from the money, the house, the name. All he wanted, he claimed, was the chance to know his son. I let him speak until the words ran dry. Then I asked what had haunted me for years. "Would you have pushed me if you had known about the will?" He flinched. "I did not push you," he said. But even his denial felt like a whisper of the truth. "You did not stop them either," I replied, my voice soft but merciless. He had chosen silence, chosen allegiance to their legacy over the life growing inside me. "You had your chance to be his father," I said, kneeling to kiss the top of Liam's head. "But you chose to be their son instead." Alex left quietly. There were no raised voices, no final pleas, just the soft click of the door closing behind him. Over the next few months, the Turners tried everything: letters from Stephanie, extravagant gifts from Georgia, desperate legal maneuvers, but I returned them all. Their guilt was loud, but my peace was louder. The boutique flourished. Liam grew stronger, smarter, happier. We did not need their bloodline. We had our own name now stitched into every garment, into every bedtime story, into every heartbeat of the life they tried to erase. If this story of survival and revenge struck a nerve, comment your thoughts below, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories that prove the truth always finds a way. Gita.